Sarvebhya Namo Namaha. Today, our lesson based on Sanskrit journalism. The development of Sanskrit journalism is an important and glorious chapter of the development of Indian journalism. A short description of the growth of Indian journalism will not be out of place in this context. Though journalism made its beginning in the Mughal period, the modern journalism with which we are concerned saw the light of the day with the establishment of the British Empire. The introduction of the English regime brought a host of evils in its wake, but its one redeeming and bright feature is the introduction of press and newspapers. The story of Indian journalism is a long chronicle of suffering, sacrifice, and dedication. In the words of a renowned Sanskrit journalist, Apya Shastri Rashivadekar, when we look at Indian journalism, the most important thing which arrests our attention is the fact that while on one hand its history is the history of the repression and depression of rulers, on the other hand its history is the history of sacrifice, dedication, and the shivering struggle of those Indian journalists who prepared the ground for the sacrifice of life in defense of the freedom of people and the ideal of journalism. But the sterling truth remains that the rise and the development of this Indian journalism was rendered possible by some English people. It flashed upon the mind of William Bolts to start a newspaper in the year 1768, but it was John Hicks who introduced Bengal Gazette on 29 January 1780. In November 1780, the newspaper of Hicks was banned on the charge of disturbing peace, and in 1781 he was imprisoned and fined by the then Governor General Warren Hastings. But the torch of knowledge lit by Hicks continued to burn brightly. The other newspapers of Bengal also derived an inspiration and stimulus from it. The rulers realized the importance of the newspapers. Consequently, Calcutta Gazette was started in the year 1784 under the patronage of the government. This was an auspicious moment for the Indian journalists. The other English journalists were inspired by this attempt and they published a number of English newspapers. In the year 1785, Bengal Journal by Thomas Jones and Madras Carrier in 1787, Calcutta Chronicles in 1789, Bombay Herald in 1795, Madras Gazette, and in 1798, Bengal Harkara made their appearance. During the regime of Wellesley, a ban was placed upon the Indian newspapers. The period lasting from 1795 to 1812 was a period of darkness for the Indian newspaper. In the year 1818, the Christian missionaries of Srirampur started the publication of a weekly Samachar Darpan. This was the first newspaper among the Indian languages. Dikdarshan 1818 was a monthly Bengali newspaper. In the year 1821, Indian journalism prospered under the leadership of Raja Ram Mohan Rai. He edited with distinction the Samachar Kaumudi in collaboration with Harachandra Rai and Ganga Kishore Bhattacharya, who were also members of Brahmo Samaj. He also edited the English newspaper Bengal Herald. Bangadut was published in Urdu, Persian, and Bengali. In the year 1832, the Royal Asiatic Society of Bengal started its journal. From the point of view of richness of matter, this journal contained the best treasures of research in the Sanskrit language. It was the pole star of the coming Sanskrit newspapers. it fostered a new awakening in the domain of those Sanskrit scholars who had also imbibed English learning. They developed a feeling of pride for their own literature and language. In the seventh decade of the 19th century, the Indian journalism acquired a new life. Various newspapers were published in all the languages of the country. The, the Vidyodaya, published by Rishikesh Bhattacharya, was accepted as the first monthly magazine of Sanskrit language. But now it has been established beyond dispute that the Kashi Vidya Sudhanidhi or Pandit, published in June 1866 by the Government Sanskrit College, Varanasi, was the first monthly journal of the Sanskrit language. Even the editor of Vidyodaya accepted this fact. Following the pattern of Pandit, Satyabrata Samasrami published the magazine Pratnakramanandini from Calcutta. Its very name denotes the keen propensity to reproduce gems of ancient Sanskrit literature. In 1872, the Sanskrit journalism was enthused with a new life because it was inspired and invigorated by the dedicated efforts of Rishikesh Bhattacharya. The journalistic career of Bhattacharya commenced from April 1872 with the publication of Vidyodaya from Lahore. With the monthly pay of 25 rupees, Bhattacharya started editing it on account of the instance of Nabin Chandra Rai and Radha Krishna Goswami. Dr. Lackner, the registrar of the Oriental College, Punjab, used to help in the printing of this magazine. Since July 1898, Vidyodaya could not be published regularly on account of the lack of funds, which was the result of the death of Dr. Lackner in the particular year, as this time Vidyodaya was being published from Calcutta. Up to the third issue of 29th volume, Vidyodaya was under proprietorship of Oriental Nobility Institute of England. Because, on account of the efforts of Lackner, this magazine began to be published on being financed by this institution. After the sad demise of Dr. Lackner, this institution stopped its support to the publication of this magazine. Rishikesh Bhattacharya was, therefore, the sole proprietor from the fourth issue of 29th volume. With this change coincided another momentous change. Up till now, Vidyodaya used to publish the English version of its Sanskrit articles also, in order to make easier the task of its English readers. But since April 1900, it became a purely Sanskrit magazine from its fourth issue of 29th volume. Since December 1913, on account of the death of Rishikesh Bhattacharya, his son Bhavo Vibhuti and Bhavobhuti continued the editing of this magazine till 1922. On account of the high quality of its articles and its literary exaltation, this magazine became extremely popular with a very short period. Even a writer of the caliber of Max Muller was deeply impressed by its articles, and he expressed his opinions thus: "There is also a Vidyodaya, the Rise of the Knowledge, a Sanskrit journal published at Calcutta, which contains important articles." This magazine has been rendered illustrious because the first artistic excellence of Sanskrit prose was reflected through its medium.